didn't see you there. My name is Alan. I'm pastor here at Pilgrim Congregational Church, and I'm really glad that you stopped by, because here at our church, we like to welcome everyone. We like to say, no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. You're welcome virtually, of course, because if you came to the church this Sunday, I would have had to shout a blessing at you through the doors. You could have joined any number of church streams this Sunday, and maybe you have, but we're grateful that you joined us as well. As a matter of fact, we have fellowship hour on Zoom at 10:30 today, where we will have coffee and conversation and whatever else it is that we eat for breakfast these days. It's critical that at times like these, when things are far from normal, that we develop and maintain some rituals and some routines that give us some kind of sense of normalcy. Our church has developed a list of people who are willing to grocery shop for those who are a little bit more vulnerable and maybe need to stay away from grocery stores if possible. So please, if you are someone who is either willing to be added to the list, it's ever growing and pretty long at this point, or if you are somebody who needs help with shopping, contact our office. The best way is always email, but you can call as well, and we will get you hooked up with someone in the church who can help out and wants to help. Also, that reminds me, we have a buddy system we're putting together so that everyone in church should have a buddy. Contact Kim to get signed up. And the buddy is just somebody who is watching out for you, knows kind of what you need, keeps you informed of things happening in the community and happening in our church. We've been on call as faith leaders in Reading with Health and Human Services, and we're working with them to kind of support in any way possible. And so we're in constant contact and sharing information via our email and now through the buddy system. Pastoral care, I wanted you to know, is still continuing throughout this time. So if you're having a difficult time, feel free to call me. I'm doing phone calls. I'm doing visitations only in times of crisis and emergency. So if there is something essential and really pressing, please let me know and we'll figure that out. But otherwise, I am completely available for phone calls and for conversations. So know that pastoral care is still happening during this time. That's it for announcements, other than the things you can find through our e-blasts or our emails. Now I'd like to introduce you to a friend who will be reading this morning's text for us. Thanks, Alan. This reading is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28 through 29, and it is Jesus who is speaking in the text. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Thanks, Alan. Yeah. Many of us come to this week with heavy burdens. Things we're carrying, anxiety, stress, fear, real challenges that seem to be piling up or just on the horizon. And I hear in the words of our spiritual teacher, Jesus, this invitation to take the things that are on my heart and to lay them down, to rest. And I believe that this text, Matthew 11, 28 through 29, is not something trite or simple, but a serious invitation for my own heart to enter this place that is transformative and encounters me deeply, some of my biggest questions. One thing that I'd like to talk about, I don't necessarily have notes, and I guess this is a different kind of sermon. I'm not really used to this, but I wanted to talk openly about some of the ways I think a pandemic can leave us vulnerable. I'm not a medical professional, not a doctor, not even a community organizer. Haven't specialized in those things, but what I do know is that some of the areas of spirituality are places that we can feel pretty vulnerable, and just makes the load and the heaviness of the moment even that much more heavy. So in clinical terms, spirituality can be assessed in kind of three different areas, and this comes from my clinical work at hospitals. Our sense of community, our sense of self-worth, and our sense of purpose. Those are three broad areas of spirituality where we find really deep meaning: community, self-worth, and purpose. That first area is pretty obviously vulnerable at the moment as we are social distancing, and normally there would be people sitting behind me. We're not as physically present to each other, and that's a deep challenge for all of us, introverts and extroverts alike. We feel a little more fractured. In some ways, we are far more in solidarity with one another and feeling our community and our society in a way that maybe we haven't before. But still, there are some challenges during this time to our sense of community. And so it is extremely important to get creative about ways of being together. So I would encourage you to join us for coffee over Zoom. And we're doing book club as well, all kinds of things. And then our sense of self-worth, having to stay home from our jobs that kind of give us purpose and a sense of self-worth. I have people in our congregation are asking big questions. Their questions are around things like why and how, and what does it mean to be at the mercy of a virus that doesn't pay attention to status or wealth or achievement or even goodness, but the good and the bad. Where is our self-worth located if something like this can affect us so profoundly? And then there's the sense of purpose. That's the domain of our spirituality, where all kinds of things give us purpose. I know when I meet people, there are things like church, there are things like service, but then, karaoke night, stand-up comedy, playing music for people, all of these things that kind of give our life meaning, that we work at, that we love, that we expand and try, and that there's a moment of stepping back from those things. And so I hear in the words of Jesus, "Come to me, you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." I hear this invitation to find our worth and our meaning outside of just the things that we can carry, outside of our productivity. For some of us, that's a challenge. This is a unique spiritual moment where we can be challenged to grow and understand our own worth outside of what we produce. And there's this sense of rest, I will give you rest. God will give you rest. And that rest, I believe, can come in the form of resting in our beingness. Not producing, not making, but just existing and being. What would it be like to look at this time as an opportunity to connect with our sense of self-worth, rather than wait for some crisis in the future to rob us of our productivity, our ability to do things, and then force us to contemplate those questions? Maybe this is that moment for us. The second part, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I hear this invitation to purpose. Jesus, as a spiritual teacher, is inviting us to take his yoke. That can mean like, in ancient Greek, it can mean the yoke that you put on like a cattle, that hold cattle together, like this burden in your work, your interpretation of the law. It can also mean scales and a balancing thing, but basically, metaphorically, it meant the rules and practices. And Jesus is inviting followers or readers to take upon his program of compassion, because that kind of purpose is easy and light. It's far easier to open up our compassion than it is to close it down. I do believe that. I believe that there is a sense of spaciousness and openness in the world. And when we tap into that, it opens things up in us. The world isn't as heavy. It is more gracious and forgiving than we probably could ever realize, especially when that opens up in us. Gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So this week, in all that you face, may you remember that your worth is not located in even how you respond to this crisis. Don't take another step or a breath without remembering that. Outside of everything that there is to do, you have worth as a person. Secondly, take this time in this week to open up your heart and your mind to compassion, to being reawakened. Use whatever religious tradition you are a part of. Sometimes we like to think that, we have the only way or the only right way, but I would encourage you, whatever your faith tradition is and whatever you've inherited, use it to awaken your compassion in this time. I believe that's what Jesus did. I believe that is what his program was all about. And we need more solidarity and more compassion. Let that be your purpose. And so, church family and friends, in whatever it is that you do or do not do this week, may God bless you and keep you. May God make God's face to shine upon you and give you peace, give you rest until we meet again. Woo!